And welcome to Stacklebeck on Terror. We've got some real teachable moments for you on the show this week, and we're going to start off with one on the state of Al-Qaeda. You know, that group the Obama administration says we can stick a fork in because they're pretty much done? Not quite. I recently sat down with leading terrorism expert David Gartenstein-Ross to set the record straight. His new book is called Bin Laden's Legacy: Why We're Still Losing the War on Terror. Check it out. And I'm joined now by my good friend David Gartenstein-Ross, author of the must-read new book, Bin Laden's Legacy: Why We're Still Losing the War on Terror. David, welcome to Stacklebeck on Terror.
Thanks, Eric. It's great to join you.
Great to have you as always, my friend. And look, the premise of your book, that we're losing the war on terror, seems to go against what the Obama administration has been saying lately. What do you say to that?
I'm quite skeptical of these claims. If nothing else, we've heard them before. In 2003, President Bush talked about how 3/4 of Al-Qaeda's leadership had been captured or killed. In 2006, the National Intelligence Estimate held that the global jihadist movement had become diffuse, lacked a coherent strategy, and was becoming increasingly diffuse. The following month, President Bush talked about how absolutely we're winning. Then the following year, we had to reverse the National Intelligence Estimate. The question really is, has the intelligence community gotten better about understanding Al-Qaeda's resilience such that it's not making a mistake this time around? To me, it's very hard to believe, especially when you look at their geographic gains, that they're on the verge of collapse.
I want to ask you, where is Al-Qaeda right now? Okay, they've been weakened in Afghanistan, Pakistan. Their hierarchy seems to have been weakened there. But where are they right now? What is the strength level of this group?
So there's 4 major places where they're extremely strong. One of them continues to be in Pakistan, in the tribal areas. You also have Yemen, where Al-Qaeda's affiliate in Yemen has been able to make geographic gains during the course of the Arab Spring. And right here, you have Somalia, and in southern Somalia, an affiliate of the organization, not an official branch, but a group that has pledged allegiance to Al-Qaeda called Shabab, is able to control territory. The other place is in the north of Mali, where they also have a geographic safe haven. Now, of course, there are other areas where they're active. You've seen a real growth in the Sinai in Egypt in recent months. You've also seen some Al-Qaeda activities in Libya as well. If it really was an organization that was on the brink of collapse, we'd expect to see them in 1, 2, maybe 3 countries where they're quite strong. Instead, there's a number of countries where they've gained strength over the course of the past decade.
Do you think this administration has done enough? And you talk about death by 1,000 cuts in the book. You know, the strategy of economic jihad, of a lot of times Fort Hood type attacks, underwear bomber type attacks, Times Square bomber type plots. Do you think this administration has done enough to kind of combat that? And really, how can you fight back against that, the so-called lone wolves or self-starters that we've seen really an explosion of, no pun intended, over the past few years on American soil?
I'd say that there are 2 things that need to be done. One is, I think profiling needs to be used as a robust tool. Not profiling
It's very
people.
politically incorrect.
It's politically incorrect, but also
effective.
Part of that is that the profiling debate is a very poor debate. When people think of profiling, they think of profiling for races that could be threatening. The most effective means of profiling is profiling for behavior, for deceptive behavior, for people who, if they're questioned in line, end up giving evasive or contradictory responses. A second thing is actually looking at this massive bureaucracy that we have for Homeland Security, intelligence, and the like, and trying to streamline it in ways that are sensible. Right now, you have a lot of lack of coordination, a lot of duplicative efforts, and I think that's an area where we can reduce our costs.
The book, once again, is Bin Laden's Legacy: Why We're Still Losing the War on Terror. Thanks again to David Gartenstein-Ross, and be sure to pick it up. You know, Western leaders just can't seem to make up their minds about how to deal with the Islamic terrorist threat. Heck, some of them don't even know what to call it. Violent extremists, anyone? Our enemies, on the other hand, know exactly what they want. I recently sat down with a former terrorist who was an associate of Osama bin Laden. He gave me a chilling insider's look at Al-Qaeda's goals and strategies for the West. Check it out.
These days, Noman Benatman lives a quiet life in London with his wife and children.
But it wasn't long ago that he stood face to face with Osama bin Laden.
He's insisting, to inflict the pain to his enemies. To the, beyond your imagination, honestly. You can't miss it, when you talk with him.
1 year before 9/11, bin Laden joined some 200 of his fellow terrorist leaders in Afghanistan. They were summoned there to discuss strategy with bin Laden and his top deputy, Ayman al-Zawahiri. The two Al-Qaeda leaders were planning to attack the U.S. homeland. And based on previous weak U.S. responses to acts of terror, they weren't concerned with the repercussions.
They said, okay, the first time when they attacked the embassies in East Africa, it was, I think, about maybe 75 or 70 cruise missiles being launched against Afghanistan. They said, okay, this time maybe it's going to be 200 if we launched against attack. I'm telling you, literally, this is their understanding for the conflict.
Bin Laden says he warned al-Zawahiri repeatedly that the American response to a major terrorist attack would be massive.
And he laughed about it, And he said, no. So he didn't believe it at the time.
Do you think that made Zawahiri look at the U.S. perhaps as a paper tiger?
He believed, not just him, I think most of the jihadists, they believe like the U.S. it's just a paper tiger, yeah.
Bin Laden told bin Laden then that he had one more big attack to carry out. Then he would retire. Things obviously did not go according to plan for the Al-Qaeda mastermind. That big attack, 9/11, did occur. But the U.S. response was overwhelming, decimating much of Al-Qaeda's senior leadership. And it was Noman bin Laden, not bin Laden, who left jihad behind. Bin Laden had spent most of his adult life as an Islamic holy warrior, or mujahideen.
If any Muslim appeared and he said, okay, there is no jihad in Islam whatsoever, please believe me, he's a liar. A pure liar. Yeah. People, they need to face it because it's a serious issue. Jihad, it's part of the Islam because it's something in the Quran. There's more than 40, I think, verses in the Quran mention jihad.
Bin Laden left his native Libya for Afghanistan during the 1980s to fight against the Soviets.
My first aim at the time, honestly, was just to be immortal, fighting the enemy for Islam. That was the main aim.
He returned home and became a commander in the Libyan Islamic Fighting Group, or LIFG. Allied with Al-Qaeda, the terrorist organization was dedicated to toppling the Gaddafi regime and establishing an Islamic state in Libya.
Once you establish your own group as a jihadi group, whether you like it or not, you have to communicate, to look for help, training, knowledge, logistic support, you name it. That's why the LIFG had to communicate with all these groups and leaders, including bin Laden, al-Zawahiri, and everyone, you name it, Taliban.
Bin Laden says his group had major differences with Al-Qaeda from the start. It wished only to wage jihad against the Libyan government. Al-Qaeda, meanwhile, sought to attack Jews and Christians worldwide. Despite their differences, the relationship continued and allowed bin Laden to form personal impressions of Osama bin Laden from their meetings.
Even when you sometimes you had to be a bit aggressive with him, debating his ideas, he always kept his calm and coolness and smile. I'm telling you from my personal point of view, my experience with him.
That calm exterior masked a sadistic mindset.
He was always happy, about everything happened, and how big, any operation or how it's been described by the media, the Western media, it always making him proud.
One such operation was the 1998 bombing of 2 U.S. embassies in Africa. Al-Qaeda killed more than 200 people and wounded thousands more.
It took him half an hour, and he was very proud talking about the amount of the explosive and how it's been regarded or being labeled by the Western government, including U.S. It's sort of I don't know, it's a weapon of mass murder. He was very proud about that.
According to bin Laden's top deputy, Ayman al-Zawahiri, was even more ruthless.
He's the most extreme person in the Al-Qaeda. Yeah, he's extremely extreme, way more than bin Laden. The word or the concept civilians, it doesn't exist in al-Zawahiri mentality or ideology.
That's why bin Laden decided to write a personal letter to al-Zawahiri in 2007, slamming the terrorist leader for targeting innocent civilians and calling on Al-Qaeda to cease all operations against the West and in Muslim countries. The letter was widely publicized in the Islamic world. Soon after, bin Laden and LIFG officially cut all ties with Al-Qaeda. They even released a book condemning the killing of civilians and pledging not to use violence to overthrow ruling regimes like Gaddafi's. But their support of what they call defensive jihad is far less appealing to Western ears.
Every single country, it's our Muslim nation or Muslim country, they still have the right to defend themselves against their occupiers. And they've mentioned Afghanistan and Iraq. They said while there's occupation there, we believe these people, they have the right to launch their own jihad.
It's all part of the contradiction that is Noman bin Laden. He appears to endorse jihad in certain cases, yet no longer engages in it himself. He opposes Al-Qaeda and the killing of innocent civilians, but is proud of his days spent fighting in Afghanistan. In the very least, Western intelligence agencies are hoping bin Laden's change of heart about his old colleagues bin Laden and al-Zawahiri will be enough to convince others to abandon the Al-Qaeda cause. You want to know what stood out for me the most about that interview? The fact that Al-Qaeda believes the United States is nothing more than a paper tiger. And can you blame them? Sure, we invaded Afghanistan after 9/11 and we hurt Al-Qaeda. But now, just 9 years later, we're talking about building a mega mosque at the scene of the crime. And our enemies, they're laughing at us. Well, one country where Al-Qaeda has shown a presence is Norway. Yes, Norway. Back in July, a sick madman who was obsessed with the spread of Islam went on a shooting rampage there. But that tragedy has not stopped civil debate in Norway over the impact of, yes, Muslim immigration. Here's my CBN colleague Dale Hurd with an exclusive report from Oslo.
Several weeks before the massacre in Norway, CBN News went to Oslo. We went to investigate reports that that nation's experiment with Muslim immigration and multiculturalism had gone terribly wrong, that Muslim radicalism was growing, along with violence and intimidation against non-Muslims. In the wake of the killings, some on Norway's left called a fear of Islamization a conspiracy theory. But the victims of Islam are real, and they are mostly Norway's women. They are problems Norway has never faced before. Every woman in Norway does not have full human rights. There are women in this country who are denied their rights by their families, and they live in fear for their lives. At the Red Cross office in Oslo, Monica Berge and Ann Marte Stifjeld take calls from Norwegian girls who face honor violence, forced marriage, and genital mutilation.
We have girls who calls, and we really get this bad feeling in the stomach that something is seriously wrong. Most of the girls tells us that I wouldn't think about it, or I never thought it would happen because I live in Norway, I have my friends, I go to school, and I never thought it would happen.
They not only live in Norway, but they were born in Norway, and they speak Norwegian. But their rights are not protected, and they are controlled by their families.
And a lot of them have been threatened or beaten up.
Hege Storhaug was a self-described naive left-wing journalist when an encounter with an immigrant woman changed her life and her career.
In 1992, as a journalist, I met a young Norwegian-born Pakistani woman, only 18 years old. And she had been married at gunpoint in Pakistan to a second cousin.
Storhaug now works full-time to protect immigrant women and girls from forced marriage, genital mutilation, and honor violence. Women, she says, who have been abandoned by the Norwegian government and deprived of their rights as citizens. Like 4 Norwegian sisters all sent to Gambia for genital mutilation.
They were aged 3 to 9 years old. All 4 were dumped in the village in Gambia, the village of origin of the family. And they were female genital mutilated in the jungle, traditional. They have been stripped from the possibility to become a full member of this society. And we have allowed it. We have allowed it.
Storhaug, who works on behalf of the rights of women, has been called a racist and an Islamophobe by the left in Norway. Something else that Muslim immigration appears to have brought to Norway is what some here call a rape epidemic. Recent police statistics showed that in the capital of Oslo, 100% of assault rapes between strangers were committed by immigrant non-Western males, and 9 out of 10 of their victims were native Norwegian women. Some blonde Norwegian women have reportedly begun dyeing their hair black, and many travel only in groups. Kristen Spitsnogel is a therapist who has counseled some of the rape victims, and she's been attacked in the Norwegian media for saying what many will not, that the rape problem is primarily Muslim men raping non-Muslim women, and any woman who does not dress modestly and wear the Muslim headscarf could be considered by some Muslim men as fair game.
For them, I think the hijab is a symbolic marker which separates the submissive, proper Muslim women from what they see as the Norwegian horse. But when I say horse, I'm really just referring to their own words. This is what they told the journalists.
Spitsnogel says Norway's left-wing establishment has been blaming the victims, because the whole notion that Islamic culture is dangerous to women is very politically incorrect here. Hannah Herland is author of the best-selling book Alarm, Thoughts on a Culture in Crisis.
And not all values, some of them are excellent, but not all values from Islamic countries or cultures are excellent to bring into the European society. And I think many times the Norwegians fear to speak about that in fear of being called a racist.
But it's hard to call a Muslim immigrant a racist for speaking out against his fellow Muslims. Walid Al-Qubaisi is a respected Norwegian writer and a Muslim who came from Iraq. He told us he's concerned about radical Islamic elements within the larger Muslim community in Norway.
We have a problem. Nobody, all deny, nobody say that. We have a big problem, but this will give a bad result in the future.
As in other European cities, parts of Oslo are now Muslim zones and may be subject to Sharia law or to the rules of local imams. When we interviewed Walid in June, no one had any idea that a crazed gunman would start killing people because of Muslim immigration. But Al-Qubaisi made what now feels like a chilling prediction.
You think there will be a backlash, a reaction against immigrants?
Clash of civilization. It will happen.
Civil war?
We don't know. I am not a prophet, but something will happen. Something will happen. I don't know, but I feel it.
Some on the left in Europe are trying to use the Oslo massacre to stifle criticism of Islam. But not talking about it won't make Norway's problems go away. Dale Hurd, CBN News, in Oslo, Norway.